this holiday season, you are likely going to feel the pressure to purchase. You are going to feel the pressure to attend, but I would like for you to be able to feel the freedom of having less. Well, hello friends, I'm Mary Beth with At What Cost, where simple living and deep faith go hand in hand. And yes, today we're going to talk about the two pressures that I think we all feel the most during the holiday season, and an alternative to those things. It's the feeling of freedom. But first, let's talk about some of these things that we may encounter as we quickly approach the holiday season. So first off is the pressure to buy. In years gone past, I have participated in many a gift exchange. People are celebrating Christmas earlier and earlier in the year because we're all so busy that we might as well celebrate together at Thanksgiving. And it's not just coming from like mass media marketing. Even at my kids' schools, I'm getting tons of flyers home about different things that are coming up. It just seems to be the time of year when all the things happen. I have already had 2 notifications that it's time to buy their Special Olympics t-shirts. All 3 of my kids have had book fairs. And then of course we have the classroom parties during Halloween, the candy grams. Then they have spirit days where they can spend $1 to wear pajamas or get shaved ice off of the shaved ice truck in the parking lot. There's just a ton of activities going on, and oftentimes it costs us money. I think I posted either on my Facebook page or my Instagram that we received the Amazon Christmas catalog in the mail. And 2 of my sons, they take sibling rivalry to a whole new level. And they are typically not the 2 that would be cuddled up in a chair together, like hanging out, okay? But this, like, look at this. This is what the Amazon catalog did. And it was very reminiscent of the days, if you're kind of in my age range or a little older, you probably remember either the JCPenney catalog coming home or the Sears catalog, or maybe even Montgomery Ward. That was a thing. Those catalogs would come home and I would spend hours poring over them, circling the things that I wanted, and nothing united my 2 feuding siblings faster than that Amazon catalog. But you know what else happened? Like real quick, they wanted so much stuff that I just know, looking at it, they may play with it Christmas morning and then they're never going to touch it again. Now, do not despair, because later in the video and in the coming months, we're going to talk about alternatives to some of these like gift giving things and traditions and things like that. So don't lose hope. There is hope. But before we move to that, let's talk about the pressure to attend. Just like these gift exchanges that require us to give these kinds of thoughtful gifts, there's just as much pressure to attend the different events that are happening. But as a full-time working mom, I can't always be at all of those events. And at some point, my schedule just needs a break. I need a break. I am a huge proponent of fellowship and time spent together and being involved in community. I think it is an essential aspect of the Christian life. But I also believe that balance and rest are also a big part of the Christian life. What do you think? Do you think it's part of it? Yes. My dog also. Yes, I know. You need balance? Are you an introvert? Yes. Just for the record, our dog Gunner, he presents as an extrovert. He is not. Every time we have home group, and it can get a little loud and a little chaotic, and it's a ton of fun, and he loves having the people over, but when they leave, He is in the bed and he does not get out of the bed for a long time. He is a total introvert. And I feel him on that one. I think it's an important lesson for all of us that we can go and have a good time, but sometimes we can feel the consequences of that later on when we're tired or we feel overwhelmed or we just feel just plain exhausted. So how do we achieve that balance? It sounds easy, but it doesn't always feel easy, right? To say no to some of those things or to not buy our kids the same kinds of things or the same amount of things that we typically would have, or worse, to elect not to pay for our kids to do the Candygram or all of the other things that sort of nickel and dime our budget during the holidays. This, my friends, is where I believe that minimalism, or at least simple living, has really made the difference in our home, not only in the amount of inventory or things that I have to manage, but in the way that we schedule our time and the peace that we find as a result of being more rightly aligned in that balance. So let's talk a little bit about this idea of freedom and how that comes into play when we start talking about things like boundaries. I know, it's a hard word to hear. Not everybody likes the B word. Yeah. So boundaries, what are they and why can we love them? Let's look it up in the dictionary. No, I don't want the self-help life skill definition of boundaries. I just want, what is the definition of boundaries? Here we go. Boundaries, a line that marks the limits of an area, a dividing line, a limit of subject or sphere of activity. Think about it like your backyard. Your backyard exists, and maybe you have a fence around your backyard. This is your boundary. You really can't cross over it without having to make some alteration to it, right? Like you have to open a gate, or you have to dig out underneath it, or you have to climb over it to exceed the boundary. But what does the boundary actually do? What does your fence around your yard actually do for you? Well, it does a lot of things. It keeps people in and it keeps people out to a certain extent. But it also helps you to know, for example, where to stop cutting your grass. We have some friends who moved into a neighborhood recently, and none of the homes in the backyards have fences. It's just an open, grassy area. And while they do have property lines, it really took some hardcore looking at their property lines to determine where their property stopped and where the other person's property started. Now, when it comes to things like events and what we're going to buy, having some boundaries in place, which could be as simple as establishing a budget, setting a bedtime for the weekends or during the week, either for yourself or your children, establishing a boundary that you're not going to cook any new recipes that you're not familiar with during high stress times. Maybe your boundary is a meal plan. So now that we know and have kind of an idea of what boundaries are, why do they help us? Well, this is an important concept, one that I still learn the hard way a lot. My capacity to do something and my capabilities are two different things. I am very capable of doing a lot of things, but my capacity to do those things, it changes and fluctuates with the amount of stress happening in our home, or the amount of sleep that I have the night before, or the budgetary limitations we may have, your workload at your job, your spouse's workload. All of these things really do affect our capacity. So just because I am able to do something doesn't necessarily mean that I have the capacity to actually carry it out. And that is a hard lesson. It requires us to really be a little bit more introspective, which can sometimes feel a little selfish. If I have the capabilities of doing something, shouldn't I do it? Shouldn't I serve someone if I have the capability of doing it? Shouldn't I participate in a gift exchange if I am able to do it? The truth is, sometimes yes and sometimes no. We want to serve. We feel called to serve. We want to be involved. We want to have community. We want to have fellowship. We also want to have our personal time with the Lord, time with our family, time with our husband, time with friends. We want to work diligently in our work. We want to do all these things, and we may be very capable of doing them, but trying to do them all at once, it's really going to get us into trouble with our capacity. I know last week's video kind of ruffled a few feathers. Most of the time it does when I start talking about my opinion on self-care, which, you know, we're not gonna go there again, but there was a comment about this idea that you are not enough. Now, this idea has gotten some backlash in the world of social media, especially when we really embrace this idea that we are not enough. In fact, most of the time we want to feel puffed up and told, like, you are enough, you are perfect just the way you are. This is the real catch, because we hear it in the church sometimes too. You are everything that God created you to be. Yes, you are. But God created you to have a need that only He can fill. You are not enough to meet all of the needs that you have. You are also not enough to meet all of the needs that others have. And this is a hard pill to swallow, because there's such a push, there's such a pressure for us to feel and act like we can take on the world. We can do anything. In fact, we may even use scripture to bolster that idea. Like, I can do all things in Christ who gives me strength. Philippians is true. That is true. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And understanding that we don't do those things within our own strength, that we require Christ's strength to actually carry out His will, really does mean that we have to acknowledge that there are limitations to our capabilities and our capacity. So boundaries help us to sort of keep that capacity and capability in check. It helps us to be able to have some criteria around what we say no to, that we're not necessarily saying no to the activity, but if any activities fall within this certain range, it's a no. I'll give you an example. I have a women's retreat for church coming up in a couple of weekends. We have gotten several invitations to do things of various degrees during that same weekend. My husband cannot be in 12 places all at once with my 3 kids. It's just not possible. Now, long before all of these invitations came in, my husband and I discussed this women's retreat and whether or not I should go. And the consensus from both of us was a resounding yes, you should go do this. This would be good for you. It would be good for us, for you to have this time of your cup being filled. So once I've committed to doing something like that, we knew that anything that came in during that weekend, I mean, all bets are off on anything else that has to happen that weekend. You may set up a boundary around gift exchanges, that you are only willing to participate in a gift exchange with either your immediate family or extended family, or maybe you're electing to do one at work this year instead of somewhere else. Maybe you skip gift exchanges altogether. It's not for everyone, but it is for someone. It could very well be the boundary that you need. So if you feel like you are struggling to kind of get excited about this Christmas season, then I would encourage you to take a good hard look at some of the boundaries that you might be able to put in place to help alleviate some of that pressure and perhaps give you a taste of freedom in the future. Thanks so much for watching. Hit the like button if you liked this video, share it with someone if you think they could benefit from it. And until I see you again, keep fighting the good fight.